We've got a special guest for you today. Name is Wilson Leung, and he's out of the San Francisco area. He's going to share with us a story about how he got to break 100 million in volume in a year. And he's going to give us the tips, the tricks, the processes, the systems, but he's going to start off with how he got started and his lift up. Of course, I'm being joined by my co-host and friend, Paul Morris. What's up, Paul?
How's it going? It's good to see you.
Dude, nice to see you, bro. I'm glad that we're wearing the same shirt.
Oh, I know, absolutely.
Except I think you're more buffed out than I am, so you feel that shirt better, bro. What are you drinking this morning?
Same old, coffee out of my Nespresso machine, and I'm getting ready to make a change.
Oh, what's the change?
I think I'm going to go old school, French press or whatever. I'm tired of the pods, I'm going getting back to my roots, old school.
Dude, I love that. What do you think about that, Wilson?
Hey, I got a Breville machine that grinds the beans at the same time.
Oh,
it's a good machine.
Okay,
it's a good investment.
Notes afterwards, because actually, the Breville Espresso Pro is the one I was looking at. Do you have maybe has the real automated one? But maybe we'll talk about that offline.
I love that, dude. We'll text all three of us will text. We'll share coffee stories and what to do next.
Recommended to me by one of my favorite realtors and guests, who was a network food star, Jeffrey Sod. We had a bazillion. I interviewed him on Real Estate Rockstars, and we had a bazillion downloads. So yeah, that's a good one to watch, not just for the coffee recommendations, but I knew who to ask. That's a good business lesson in that. I feel like I don't need to be an expert in very many areas. When I have friends who are experts in areas, I just go, I'm not going to research the coffee. I don't like the way the coffee tastes. I'm going to text Jeffrey Sod. And he's been researching it for 20 years. He's like, oh, I'm glad you texted. I switched from this to I'm now using the Breville. See, but Wilson's not even a tenth of a step behind. He's a step ahead.
Well, that's why we got him here. He knows his coffee. This is a whole other webinar. I love this.
Why did I even text the coffee expert? I'd be like, hey, we're talking to Wilson tomorrow. Get all the real estate tips, and he'll tell me what coffee to drink.
I love it, dude. I love it. Well,
appreciate you guys.
Thanks for being on, buddy. Let's get started. Tell us a little bit about who you are, when you got started, and your trajectory upwards.
Yep. And I want to appreciate Paul and Tristan for having me, and everyone that's watching. If I could contribute in some way, just let me know. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in Chinatown, San Francisco. I lived there for 9 years of my life. I was, relatively sheltered from a lifestyle that maybe some of my friends or even my brothers and my family was involved with. And I was the only college educated boy on my father's side that has, finished a undergrad. Super fortunate and grateful for that opportunity, because I think even just half a generation earlier from me, my half brothers, they didn't get, they had the opportunity, but I think it was a different lifestyle. And being sheltered, I was a very introverted person growing up. I would go home and play video games every single day. And, I had some life experiences that changed my personality, my senior year of high school. And I just got super impatient and super restless. I thought college was a waste of time. I went from a barely getting into a UC or college student, disengaged, play video games, go home, to I'm wasting time, graduating 3 years, majored and minored, took 40 units of accounting and didn't pursue any of that. And my start in real estate was more so early on in my life. I had the opportunity to help my parents, collect rents. And a lot of times it was in cash. It was in San Francisco. They were rent controlled units. and I've seen, you know, a fair amount of different things, especially with the San Francisco environment and housing. So that gave me early experience as to, you know, what the power of having real estate did for our family. Because as I grew up, we lived in Chinatown, as I said, for 9 years. We didn't own anything, and my parents took huge risk in business. We used to drive down from here to Mexico to meet fishermen. We were in the shark fin business. So um, the cost of doing business, as I say, was you would get stopped by the federal policemen in Mexico, and they would take 2 hours of your time. And at the end of it, they would give you a white envelope asking you for a bribe to let you go.
That's the
And they,
federales, dude.
yeah, and they singled us out because we're Asian. We got a box fan and we got California plates. So it was, you know, we stuck out like a sore thumb. But I saw them take risk in business, and they invested so much of what they made in real estate, and that gave me exposure to two things. First was, you have to make risk, you have to be uncomfortable, sometimes you even have to risk your life, and in my case I go knock on doors, when I did before COVID, to build my business. And that's nothing compared to, you know, I'm sure a lot of people, we're all immigrants to this country in some way. And you know, the risk that my parents had to take is nothing compared to what I have to do day to day in real estate. So I'm just super grateful for even just having the opportunity to serve my clients, because a whole generation ago, I was just talking about this last week. You know, my dad still approaches me every so often. He's a very traditional guy and he doesn't talk much, but he says, Wilson, we don't have to worry about putting food on the table for generations to come, in Chinese. And I'm like, you know, he doesn't say much, but that's pretty impactful, because in some ways he has made it in some way to the promise, you know, United States, and he's made it for himself in a sense that he went from, you know, more so illegitimate to legitimate business, right? So that's my upbringing. That's influenced me to want to do better. Every day I think about, you know, I want to have no regrets. I want to push myself, push to the limits, so that when I wake up the next day, I knew I gave my all the previous day. When, you know, 20 years later, which happened so quickly, I've been in the industry for 9 years now, and I don't want to have any regrets. I want to be able to um, take, you know, what I've learned from others, which that's why I'm on this call, because I've learned so much from other people, and I just want to give back to the agent community as much as they've given to me. So um, now where we're at is 9 years in business. I've been building my team for about 5. This year we're probably going to be around 130 million in volume. That's going to be about 110, 115 transactions, which means our average price point's a little above $1 million. And you know, 5 years ago, I was doing 7 million in volume. So from 5 years, 7 mil to right now, 130, I would have never thought about that being possible. Even to this day, I wake up and we do our huddles with our team. Super grateful for every single person on my team. Hopefully that gives you a good idea.
Wow, that's amazing. And thanks for saying that too. So much of that is very inspirational. And thanks for saying, you know, at some level we're all immigrants. I think people forget that. You know, like uh, I haven't seen any Native Americans up there with a microphone. You know, right? I mean, like other than that, aren't we? You know, aren't we all immigrants? I mean, it's really fascinating, and I appreciate you saying that. And then also just really the first generation, right, to sort of cross that barrier and then turn into to such a great career. Do you think that education helped you at all, or did you get pressure from your parents? You know, like, hey, we're sending you to school, be a doctor, be a lawyer, anything. The reason why I asked that is because I come from a very similar background. You know, uneducated dad. You know, he didn't want me to be a salesman. He wanted us all to be doctors or something.
Yeah, I think my parents definitely valued education. My mom grew up in Taiwan. Her parents, my grandma, fled China during the communist movement. He was part of the military, so they had the opportunity to flee. And she, out of her four siblings, including herself, was one of two people that could get a college education because the other two had to work to support, a single mom. Unfortunately, I never got to meet my grandpa. Um, and education was important. If it wasn't for my mom's ability to, her major was English, and she was an accountant, she wouldn't have been able to build the business with my father, who was uneducated, who was a risk taker, who was, more of the salesperson,
Mhm.
more so not book smart but street smart. He never finished elementary school.
Mhm.
To this day, he doesn't speak fluent English, and he's living in the United States for the last 30 years. So they call US the promised land because you can just do so much. There's opportunity here. Yet, as much as there's so much going on externally, I think every day I wake up and I want to be an example for other people that I could still make a difference for myself and for my family and for my people, regardless how imperfect, our environment is. We could still make a difference, and do our best and give it our best, right?
Mhm.
So education definitely is important. At the same time, I felt like I was wasting time in college because a lot of what I learned in college, I feel like college is more of a stepping stone. It was necessary. It's like socially acceptable. It's socially seen as something that you need to do. Yet, what do I apply from college? I'm sure there's lessons, there's friendships that I built from college. But
Sure.
overall, more so what I've learned from people like yourself, business builders, people that are working in the field, the actual experiences have really made an impact for me. So after college, I would spend over 150, $200,000 on just educating myself, following mentors like, shout out to Ben Kenny, who I model my business behind,
Yeah.
who's, a KW agent in Washington. And of course, everyone in the community, whether it's leadership at KW or lab coats agents, early on, I searched my own name on lab coats agents, and I searched the early things I asked like 4 or 5, 6 years ago. I still find those posts. It's pretty amazing what I was thinking and asking back in the day. So, but yeah, I would say constantly education is not necessarily the formal education that we think of college, of, high school. It's more so after that, when no one's watching you, what do you want to learn? And what are you going to do for yourself to push yourself to get that information? Am I going to reach out to someone like you, Paul, who I'm sure you've built, massive business and you've gotten to your position in leadership because you've done some good things? Do I have, am I willing to be uncomfortable to reach out to you? And I'm sure you're more than willing to share. So,
I love it. Um, and to that point, I found more and more, just being like really transparent. I love to share, and I love when people reach out to me who are really looking to learn, like, hey, what can I learn from what, I don't know everything, but if you want to ask me some stuff in my area, some from my experience, what can I learn? How can I move forward? I just love it. And that's a good tip for everybody. That I pay that. I use that going forward too. I talk to mentors all the time, but I'm real focused on a couple of things. And one is I always ask them how I can contribute to them, even if I cannot. If I'm talking to a billionaire, what can I possibly contribute to them? Just the question alone is very important. Hey, Wilson, how could I earn the right to 15 minutes of your time via Zoom? And then when that 15 minutes comes, I'm making sure there's no woe is me. I got my list of questions. Hey, Wilson, I researched this and I saw that you came out of school in San Francisco. I know you're an introvert. One of the things I'd love to know is how does a guy who's naturally an introvert, obviously good salesman, but naturally an introvert, how do you convert that into a big sales business? Actually, that's a live question for you, by the way.
yeah. Um, I'm amazed to this day too, because at the end of the day or at the end of the week, I rather just stay home and read a book, hang out with my dog, and play video games still. That's like taking my mind off of, now I consider, business the ultimate game because it actually influences your life, right? If you win in business,
Yeah.
you can obviously
Yeah.
do anything in the world and give back and, make a big impact, right? It's not artificial. But yeah, to answer your question, how did I go from, and I still am an introvert. I just pushed myself, the desire to succeed got to a point that I didn't care about how uncomfortable it would get because I knew I had to make a difference for myself. Because if I didn't, I would not only be letting myself down, but letting my peers and my family and my close friends down. I talk to my team members all the time. How boring and how lonely would it be if I was able to succeed, but yet I have no one to celebrate with,
Mm.
right? No matter how introverted I am, I still value relationships because it's
Oh,
lonely to be by yourself.
yeah.
Um, and that's why I value relationships to the extent that I invest time in, of course, my team members. I get to choose who's on the team, and I can succeed with them. Right? I could go so much further with others. And in order for us to succeed, we have to add value to the world. And the more people we can add value to, the more that obviously will be, hopefully, we can get compensated for. And what I realized was, in order for me to build a big business, I just had to have a lot more attempts, a lot more encounters.
Mhm.
And more so, it came down to the conditioning in my mind. For example, back in the day, if I was knocking on a door, I would not think about how many doors I needed to knock. I would turn on my Map My Walk app and just make sure that I'm going to be out there for an hour. And
Mhm.
how I saw it was, I'm going to enjoy sunlight. I'm going to enjoy smiling at people and waving at people. And that's it. I'm not going to care so much about the actual conversation. I'm
Mhm.
not going to care so much about the actual knock, or if the doorbell is not working, or if they have a ring and, it automatically turns on when you walk in front of the door, or, if there's a gate and I can't get to it. I'm just going to spend an hour out there just waving at people and just saying hi and smiling and getting some, sunlight. So that's how I saw it. And that's how I pushed myself. And that just created opportunities, right? We all say from the MREA that we have two shops. First is lead gen, then it's servicing. You can be a very good servicer, have great customer service, really care for others, but if you have no clients to service, it's no point. So you have to spend time lead gen, in lead gen.
Question for you, buddy. Let's go dig in deep and get into specifics of how you grew from 7 million to 130 million now. What what were those initial first steps that you took towards that direction? Because a lot of agents, I feel, get stuck. They're in a plateau and they don't they don't push through. It's like they have this potential, but they never get there.
Yeah,
What did you do and what did you focus on to get there? What was your main focus?
that's a great question, and I realize that's the purpose of this. So I'll share my personal step by step, and hopefully other people could have takeaways from it. So first was my first 4 years in a business. I was super frustrated, and I'll tell you why. I was frustrated because the way that I defined success at that time was I wanted to help a lot of families. Yet helping a lot of families as an individual agent is really stressful because you do everything from paperwork, from prep, from servicing escrow, from prepping a listing, selling, keeping up with lead gen and lead follow up, going on appointments. There's just a lot to do. And the best way that was explained to me was Craig Rieger from Oregon. And shout out to him because, early in my team building career, he was there to give me good insight and he was there to help me. And what he said was, Wilson, imagine you were walking into a doctor's office and a doctor was the one that's hurrying you to sign in, was, being the nurse and taking your vitals, was the specialist and asking you some questions, and also was the doctor that diagnosed and prescribed you, and also was the doctor that gave you the little slip and collected your payment and waved goodbye and then said, I had to attend to the next person because I'm a one-man show for the doctor's office. That doesn't make sense. If we could visually see why that doesn't make sense in a doctor's office, why should that make sense in the real estate industry? So if you want a better way of, having focus for your time, if you first, it takes self-awareness to know what you're really good at. Hopefully it's something on a sales side. It's something about building relationships or strengthening them. It's something about marketing. It's lead gen, right? So if you believe that your time is best used for a higher dollar per hour task that will generate business, you should learn and also delegate the rest of it. And I think most of the mistakes that I see a lot of agents make as well is they have the mentality that I'm the boss and you're the employee. You do as I say. Yet the right way to think about it is we are a partnership. I might be paying you, but yet you're taking care of half of the business. That's equally important because if you're unable to take care of it, I can't take care of the sales side. So my first 4 years, it was very frustrating because I defined success as just closing deals, helping families. And that changed because I had good mentorship. I realized that if I were to grow and if I were to focus on things that I enjoyed and I had the opportunity to partner with someone to do the things that I didn't enjoy, that gave me more time to focus on things that I maybe excel at more. So that first year from 7 to 19 million, I hired an assistant, and halfway through that, I hired a buyer's agent. And early on, why did I hire a buyer's agent when I didn't even first it was out of budget. My assistant was 40% of my gross commission income. As we know from the red book, it should be about 15. But I knew I was going to grow a business, so I had to spend a little bit more, right? So I was willing to take a risk and leap of faith. I knew I was committing more so to a month or 3 months versus a whole year's salary. That's how I thought about it. And I was investing. It wasn't an expense. I was investing in a person's time because they would be able to help me focus on what I should be good at and what I should be doing with more of my time. With that, we naturally grew from 7 to 19 million. And I already had sites for the next year that I was not going to work a buyer for the rest of my career. And I was going to focus on sellers because if you focus on sellers, you control the inventory, the buyers will come to you. It's a little different during COVID because we don't have open houses. We're not out there door knocking. Face-to-face appointments are not as, socially acceptable, of course, at this time. So it's more digital. But from that second year, we went from 19 million to 72 million. And in the last 3 years, including this year, we've been averaging over 100 million in volume. And my struggle is growing past this now. So my natural hurdle is where we're at, and we're looking to
Wilson,
go. Sorry.
the thing that I want to go deeper on is when you went from, did you say 17 or 19 million?
7 to
7
9,
million?
19 to 70.
19 to 70. You said first it was delegation that got you to 19. Then from 19 to 70, you said I started focusing on listings. Can you give us a breakdown of what that looks like? Was it mailers, a sphere, past clients? What did you focus on that got you there?
Yeah, I think timing helped me a lot too, because my first 4 years, as frustrated as I was, I would go and flyer. I would go and say hi to neighbors. So I was building my farm for a period of time before I started building my team. I also used to be a cold caller. Circle dialing was something that I built, a 800 person database with. And it was more so, just follow up opportunities. I wasn't looking for the listing today, but I was looking for, people that wanted to stay in touch with us because we were delivering something of value, information, sports calendars, whatever value was, however it was defined by our consumers in our community. As I built my farm, we started hosting more events, which obviously this year we couldn't. And that my way of sharing it with the clients was in the community. This is my way of giving back because this community has helped myself and my business. So hosting free picnics, hosting events, and it's a win-win because they see it as it's a great event. I can have my kids out. We dress up as, for example, I was Mr. Incredible for Incredible 4 like a year or two ago. Some of my it was like they had a Disney experience at the movie theater, which kind of we can't do that right now, but it gave them an experience. When the kids are happy, the parents are happy. But to give you, I guess, the detail, I was building my farm throughout this time. And my first year from 7 to 19, I gave up all admin tasks. I tried to at least, right? And then we started building systems from, getting a lead to adding it to the database to following up with the database. So 8x8, 33 touch, maintaining my farming, so 12 direct. And then eventually, as people rose their hand, building systems from pre-appointment to appointment, from appointment to signed contract, from signed contract to close of escrow and post-close. So we started to be very purposeful of building systems. I headed that because I was the most experienced person on a team. And then of course I guided my assistant to creating the systems. And if I didn't have those years of frustration, I don't think I would have been as good of a trainer. So as much as I look back and I'm like, I should have built my team sooner, it's a blessing in disguise because I gave myself the opportunity to learn some of the parts of the business that I knew I didn't excel at, but it gave me insight on how I would be able to delegate appropriately to, let's say, my assistant or my buyer's agents. From 19 to 70, I focused on bringing on buyer's agents. And then I focused on making sure that we had great social proof, and we advertised on Yelp, and our presence and our brand just gave us opportunities to work with a lot of buyers. And I think in the last 4 years, I've worked with 3 buyers, and one including myself, and the other two, I showed one property. Otherwise, I would not have worked buyers. So I made a very purposeful decision that I was going to hire specialists from day one that these buyers agents joined the team. I told them, you're going to specialize in servicing buyers. You're going to be better than I ever was as a buyer's agent because I never had the focus that you could. So, and that's how we went from 19 to 70. And we grew our staff and we grew our buyer's agents. And I was always focused on lead gen, our 10% of our GCI, how are we spending it? And what are we getting in terms of an ROI? So.
And one of the things, and Tristan, I appreciate you that jump from 19 to 70 is obviously huge. I also, while we have Wilson, I also want to hear about 7 to 19, because I really do talk to a lot of realtors that, they're at that 7 million volume, 7 million, you're still making a decent living, and they really want to turn it into something, bigger and better. 7 million also tells me that you know how to do a deal. There's a lot you know how to do. It's not just taking somebody from 0, like 0 to 7. I'm like, well, can they do it or not? At 7, they can do it, right? So now how do we get from 7 to 19?
I love that. Yeah, there's definitely, I think, details I can give that will help people that are in the same position. Um, 7 million at that time was 10 transactions. So guys, my ceiling of achievement as an individual agent was 10 transactions. It wasn't a lot. So as much as I'm a very traditional salesperson, I'm not very good. My follow-up's horrible. So that's why I think it made sense for me to start building a team too, to have someone that's more detail oriented to help me with systems and servicing. So from 7 to 19, I made a commitment. 40% of my GCI went towards the salary of a staff member, my first hire, who's still with me to this day. And, what were the things that were going through my mind? Because I'm sure it's going through a lot of people's mind. Am I going to give enough to this person to do for a full-time job? Am I giving too much, too little? Is it worth it? Am I really going to spend, $40,000, $50,000? Is this an expense, or could I see this as an investment in my business? What do I need to do with my time to make sure that this is worth it? Craig told me at that time that there's 2 lists that you have to make right before you hire your first assistant. And that's the real key to how we did 7 to 19. And the 2 lists consist of, and as you go through this process, you want to just have that notepad next to you, or let's say your phone. First is, what do you not enjoy doing in your business? Take inventory of that. Hopefully it's all the operational things. Hopefully it's the things that take a lot of time, that are a little bit more tedious, so you can focus on the sales. The second list is, I'm sure you come across, especially on lab coats agents, a lot of ideas, yet you do not have capacity as an individual agent to pursue them. So make a list of the things that if you implemented, or ideas that you want to implement, but you can't. And eventually you can tackle it and prioritize it once you hire that assistant. Now you have 2 lists. The first list is everything you do not enjoy doing, and it's probably going to be a long list. The second list is everything you want to implement in your business, the ideas, yet you can't because you don't have capacity. Now you basically have a job description for your first hire. And your first hire needs to be an assistant that supports you, because as you start growing your team, if it's important for you to have team members, your value to the team members is not leads. Leads is one of the pillars, but it's not the only thing. Because if leads are the only pillar, they will just see leads as the reason why they should join another team or stay with yours. You should be thinking about, how can you increase your dollar per hour so that when you do hire agents, you can increase theirs too. And they will never leave you if you can keep them at a high dollar per hour when they choose to work. And if you have a great support staff, even if they choose not to work and go on vacation or spend more time with family, they know that you and the team will take care of their business when they're gone. So the key to building a team, at least from my perspective, first is focus on your highest dollar producing task and continually going along the path of increasing that. The second is if you get benefit from your staff and your team should receive equal benefit. Otherwise, they're going to call you a hypocrite. Otherwise, they're not going to see that this team obviously is a place that they can grow to the extent that you have. So that's how I went from 7 to 19. I was very purposeful about what it is that I needed to do. And I wanted to make sure that I learned the things. I had the opportunity to learn the things that I delegated. I looked at it as a partnership because my staff was equally as important as me. If it wasn't for my staff, I wouldn't be able to grow. And then third is, I started to build systems. We time block time to purposely sit down. I didn't just, throw the job to my assistant. Early on, before the day started from 7 to 8, we spent an hour every single day training, talking about how her day went the previous day and troubleshooting, and to get to a point so that she could be self-sufficient. Not just from day one, I just gave her the role and say, hey, I'm going to do my thing, sales, and you're going to do your thing, ops. So hopefully that gives some insight to be helpful.
And Wilson, I want to call you out on something.
Yes.
I love what you're saying. I totally get it. If you pull out the things that you're really naturally good at or that you really love to do, your productivity level is going to skyrocket, period. That's a fact. So I love that. But here's what I want to call you out on. And that is that right at the beginning of our conversation, you told us that, as an introvert, right? Some of these sales things, and you're a great salesperson, but some of these sales things were a little more difficult for you. So now I sit down, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say, I like the sales process, but, I talk to a lot of people, and one of the struggles that I have when I talk to lots and lots of people is the focus on lead generation. I'm always like, focus on lead generation, focus on lead generation. Now you being introverted, you knew right off the bat that's something you had to do. You're not going to delegate that. So how do you square that? Because what if I give that list to anybody? Maybe they'll say, well, I don't feel like door knocking. I don't feel like calling my sphere. I don't feel like, I want to play with designs of my flyer. Right?
Great question.
Tristan shaking his head. Yes. I mean, right. We talk to realtors all the time that face that. Doesn't make them bad people. It's just, It's an uphill climb when I'm having that conversation.
Absolutely. I think perspective is powerful. I think there's two things I'm going to talk about here. The first is, and I'll get back to this. The first is I see lead gen as relationship building and lead follow-up as strengthening relationships. So it's not necessarily I have a count, we do a contacts per day, yet I see it as how can I add value in this conversation today, or how can I strengthen my relationship with this person today? And that's all that I think about. So lead gen sounds daunting because maybe it's intimidating to do, it's uncomfortable to do. But if you come from the perspective of how can I add value to the other person, even if it's just a 1-minute phone call, it starts with you being present. It starts with you having your 2 ears and you're listening to the conversation. And sometimes we are afraid of it because we do not get results from it, right? And we don't want to go through a whole day of calls and not get a result. Yet, I think it's important for us to measure appropriately how can we win today. Winning the day means you move the ball forward in building a relationship, whether you get a sale or not. So when I make my 25 contacts every day, I just want to know that every single conversation, was I able to or attempt to add value? And secondly is, did I spend time where this person values the relationship, where a follow-up opportunity would be present for the future? So that's how I think about it. The second thing that maybe will help even better is perspective. Perspective is very powerful. My parents, my dad didn't learn English. He doesn't have the equal opportunity that I have an educated mind, right? That I had the opportunity to educate myself because of the foundation that they gave me. So for me, my choice is I could work a 9 to 5, scroll Facebook every now and then, and make a 6-figure job here in the Bay Area, but I chose not to. I didn't want to be mediocre. I didn't want to live an average life. I wanted to push myself. Here's why. There's many sad situations that happen, especially now with COVID, and loss is just a reality of life, right? But how can we utilize what we learn about other events to our benefit, right? We have to have a good attitude about it. We can either succumb to the external factors out there and the unfortunate things, or we can utilize that and say, I have an opportunity today. You know, my uncle who was, shot and killed, he made it to the promised land, yet he cannot live his retirement because he's not here anymore, right? I used to go door knock and I would cry in my car. And because I think to myself, I have this opportunity and my uncle doesn't. And as much as he's done everything he could to have the opportunity, it was taken away from him. Or I have a friend that passed away from stage 4 stomach cancer. He wanted to, he felt like a man. He did not want to go to the doctor. It's just a stomach pain. It'll go away. The ulcer became a stage 4 cancer by the time he found it. He was 27. He didn't drink. He exercised a lot. He ran marathons. He ate healthy. Who would have knew? I have an opportunity today. We all do. And the opportunity is to maximize your time, because you just don't know when you're not going to have it. You just don't know when there's going to be a moment that you can't act on it anymore. When you break a leg or something happens that I can't go out and door knock. So I might as well do it right now, because the last thing I want is for myself to be in regret, right? That drives me. I do not want to regret my actions. I want to live a life where I can look back, even if it's 5 years later, that I'm super proud about it, that my team members are proud about it, that I was able to be an example, starting with myself, building self-confidence, but also for my people, my team members, and ultimately people that are going through their own struggles. It's not to discount the struggles that we're going through, yet I think perspective and your attitude around it matter. So perspective is what I leverage. I think back to the experiences that I've had, as a young adult, as a kid, and I realized that I have an opportunity. When COVID came and shelter in place was in force, when most people were panicking, the only thing that I thought of was opportunity. How can I be a pillar for my family, my friends, my audience, the people that matter in my life? Because if I'm not, I'm just going to be your average guy that just posts things that were concerned about what's going on. And yet that's not going to be helpful at all. So I needed to put my head down, work, especially when no one was watching. Those days that no one showed up to the office before I built my team. One of the keys I'll give you is I showed up by myself. Every day I just decided to show up. No matter if I had an appointment, no matter if, other people showed up, I decided to show up by myself, and I took over the conference room at the KW Burlingame office and I just made calls. It did help that it was nice and airy, that there was coffee at the office and there's water. And of course, shout out to Paulette, who's still at that office, the director of First Impression. She's an amazing person. Always a beautiful smile and greeting in the morning. So, but I showed up every day when there was no reason to show up. The question is, tomorrow when you wake up, what are you going to do to make a difference for yourself, to see the opportunity, and first show up for yourself, even though no one knows that you showed up today. That's the hardest part. If you can do that on a consistent basis, I think you'll start to, develop a following or start to get noticed for the right reasons. Not because you posted something about, whatever you see on social right now. So I don't know if that helps. Hopefully that does.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And there's, I know Tristan has a question, but just to follow up on that, one of the things, I love that perspective piece. It's so important because we can contextualize anything. You could find the bad in a wonderful day or a wonderful event or whatever. And conversely, you can find the good. And sometimes it's a little harder to find the good when times are so tough. And the question is, what about this? What about this event? Could I make great use of? And if you don't have to have an answer. In fact, maybe you wouldn't even ask the question if you had an answer. Just ask the question. Somebody gets fired from their job. It's devastating. What about this could I make great use of? And sometimes post termination is when people find their greatest opportunity, their greatest, so there is always something amazing on the other side of that event or intensity, whatever it is.
That's
Absolutely.
very true. You know what it reminded me of, Paul and Wilson, as you were talking, was we interviewed, maybe, I think it was like beginning of summer. I think it was Caleb. He's a world champion boxer. And he said something very similar to what you're saying. And that's that when nobody was paying attention to him, his name's Caleb Plant, if you want to Google him. Nobody's paying attention to as he was growing to become world champion. He says, I was still showing up every day. I was still showing up. And all of a sudden, I went from nobody to world champion. They don't know how much work I put into this, right? How much harder I worked than everybody else, right? How much I had to fight against my negative thoughts, against everything else that was going against me. So Caleb is a pretty amazing guy. You reminded me of him when you said that. So that's pretty cool.
And then also there
Thanks
is
for
this,
sharing that.
go ahead, Tristan.
No, I have a separate question, but you have something that pertains to this. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's just over time. This is one of my favorite sayings, things to think about is as humans, we greatly overestimate what we should be able to do in a short period of time. And then we underestimate what we can accomplish over a long period of time. So, there's so many examples of that, but I built a real estate portfolio, and it is like, you look at where I am now, you go like, oh, wow, you have 600 rental units. Like, wow, you're a real estate investor, this is cool. And it was built so mind-numbingly slow. There's certainly faster, better, I've learned a lot, but just a little bit of time, and it's sort of the gradually then suddenly, right? It wasn't until, I had 20, 30 units, I even thought of myself as a real estate investor, and so it's just finding those deals a little bit over time and space over, time on task over time. And then that is part of your showing up every day. And it's one foot after the other, after the other, after the other. And it creates this amazing result after the journey, but it does take that journey. It takes those first steps and then the continuous steps. I mean, the other one I look at is, hey, I look at somebody that's super fit. This is a great example. I look at somebody that's super fit. There is nothing that I could do in a week, no matter how hard I work. I could work out 14 hours a day for a week. I'm not going to look like that person. But rather, if I worked out 45 minutes a day, 6 days a week over a long period of time, then it happens. And that's like building a business. It doesn't have to take forever, but I certainly took note of the fact that in the beginning, you were really building your influence, building your name, building your sphere. You're doing some of the things you didn't love doing, which is door knocking, just getting yourself out there and just on it. And then it just becomes a snowball in your favor. At one point in time, it's like pushing a boulder up a hill. And at some point in time, it sort of levels off, it gets easier, and eventually it will go downhill.
Yeah, let me share a little bit on that too. First is a good way of saying this is blissful dissatisfaction. I get it from one of my mentors I listened on podcasts called Ed Milet. He's from SoCal. And what he says is blissful dissatisfaction is blissful in the moment that you're happy with what you have, but you're dissatisfied because you can do more. There's still more that you could pursue. You could be better. I lost my train of thought for the second thing I was going to say, but that's something that came to mind when we're talking about this.
It's all right, dude.
I thought you were going to talk about yoga, because that's what my yoga teacher says all the time, is a wonderful discomfort or something like that. Not going to the point where you're like in pain and it's a bummer, but knowing that edge where you can go a little further and there's a little bit of discomfort as you're moving forward. Blissful discomfort. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. So guys, we've got 5 minutes left. I want to cover one question here that could turn into a lot of other things, but Wilson, what does your team structure look like? How many agents, how many staff, And what's your average split with your buyer's agents?
Yep. So we have 7 agents, including myself. I'm the primary listing agent on the team. We just recruited 2 ISAs that will become juniors and eventually buyer's agents as well. All my agents are able to take their own listings. I think the way that we define value and what we provide to the agents is they focus on sales and we take care of everything else. So all of our agents are on 50-50 split. They have an opportunity to go to 60-40 if in a year they surpass 8 million in personal volume. And what I mean by that is, let's say there's $1 million deal and they're splitting 50-50, they get credit for 500,000. And as that adds up to $8 million, their sphere deals, they get 60-40. Now, how do we justify 50-50? And some of my agents, retention's high on our team. So 4 years, 2 of our agents is 4 years. So right when I started building the team. And then other agents have been here for 3 and 2 years. And then our obviously new ISAs have been here for 2 weeks. So what we do in a transaction is, for my commitment is for every one deal they put on the table, I should be able to supplement with another. So at least they're equal in terms of volume, in terms of commission income. The second thing is they take care of the sales portion and we take care of everything else. So whatever I benefit from for myself, my agents benefit. So just to quickly run you through it, when I take a listing, let's say I get an up call, I send an invite to my listing coordinator who prepares a package. I show up to the office the day before I go on my appointment and I get it signed. I deliver the package back to her. She's the one that coordinates vendors, preps it, makes sure that the timelines are fulfilled, disclosures are filled out, and it gets to a point where we're on market. She's the one that coordinates with Calendly for showings at this time with PAT forms. And then she's the one that lets me know when someone's interested. And that's when I step in for negotiations. Once it's a negotiated deal and we go into contract, I give it to my escrow coordinator and my client care specialist. And I'll explain my staffing in a little bit. My client care is the one that communicates with all the members of the transaction and make sure that the timeframes of the contract are fulfilled. At the end of it, I jump on a call and I send an email saying, congratulations, thank you for working on this file, and thank you for selling your home with us. The question is, how much time did I commit to this process? Very little.
I was going to say, dude, tiny little bit.
Yeah, and it's designed to be purposeful that way. I want my agents to focus their time on building relationships and strengthening ones in a database, because if they do that, my staff will be able to take care of the transaction from prep to on market. We'll negotiate, and then in escrow, they'll take care of. It's very similar on the buy side. My agents don't write their own offers. But with that, of course, there's a balance of what they earn, right? They have to perceive the value for them to justify the 50-50 split. Now, if you're building a team and you've already offered more than 50-50, you're going to have a hard time scaling because you're going to have little flexibility on offering more value because it's hard to. You have less of a budget to do so. And proudly saying we're at a 25 to 30 ending of this year profit margin. So that's the net profit that we'll have in my business. So I'm very proud of that because yes, I could be netting more as an individual agent with an assistant. I think if you want to run a very lean business, which we are pretty lean for the size that we're at, but if you run very lean, the moment you have one person turnover, such as you can't commit your time to sales, such as your assistant not being able to show up for work for 1 week because she took a week off, your business will collapse as much as you have systems, because the systems are run by the people in your business. So the purpose of building a bigger business is so I could have more leverage. My team members could have more leverage. There's separation and specialization of duties that makes this machine run. And so that when one person needs to take a vacation or do something with their time, it's still going to be working. Our clients are still served. So that's the general idea behind this. And it
Wilson,
splits.
I love that, buddy. Paul's got a 2 to 3 minute fire round. Are you ready for this?
Yep.
Oh, unmute yourself, Paul. Hold on.
Got it. Thank you. I love it. I love it. Let's see how I do with this, because I was so delighted to have Wilson and and him giving us so many gems. Somebody else could have their own list, but hey, I'm here with Tristan. I'm taking notes. Here's my list. So how do you get to lead generation? And you talked about door knocking and how uncomfortable that could be. How does an agent get themselves to do those things that are tough, right? And one of the things I heard you say was you kind of gamify it, right? You create a game about how long you're doing it, not how many doors, making it somewhat fun, but then also creating the context of it. And you went so far as to say there were moments when you were crying in your car, right? So if that's not an example of what you said as blissful dissatisfaction, I don't know. You're definitely taking yourself to the edge. How do you do that? You've got a bigger why. You don't want to let yourself down, and then all the people who believe in you, right? And you think of the potential that you have, the chances that your dad took, and your friend who had cancer doesn't have this opportunity, and that's how you get yourself to be motivated. Then looking at it from the client side, it's not really how you make a sale, but how you add value. These are all the gems that I'm pulling out of what Wilson has said. Interesting. How do I add value? But then Wilson says the value is defined by the community. Okay, so it's not like, hey, let me think of I'll add value by giving them what I want. He's thinking about what does the community want, and then had a great quote: "When the kids are happy, the parents are happy." Right. So that's a great example of that within the community.
That's some good notes, Paul.
Just your perspective really of this is a great opportunity no matter what. And that brought us to the question of how can I make use of this? So whatever challenge there is right now, how can I take that challenge and make great use of it? Really cool point about a single agent. Actually, I've heard a lot of stuff, have never heard the doctor office analogy, right? Can you imagine if the doctor answered the phone, came out to greet you, did all this stuff, took your blood pressure, did the meds, and then was like,
That'd be silly.
I have your credit card, right? You'd be like, right. So that's easy. That's not easy for us to understand as realtors. That's a great way to put that to your client. When your client says, hey, I want you to do everything. You're like, hey, you're hiring me because I'm an expert. I'm an expert at the things that are really valuable in this deal. You wouldn't want me to do some of these other things. So just to focus on the things that add high value. So that's those are some great nuggets that I pulled out of it.
I appreciate the opportunity to share, and I'm happy. There's definitely some takeaways. I'm an open book. If anyone has questions, you're more than welcome to ask. Like I said early on, people help me, so I'm just giving back.
I had, and I got a note too. I had just a couple of questions, couple of follow-ups. One of the things you talked about is you talked about social proof. And I think I know what that means, but I'd love to hear more about that. And then the other thing you said was circle dialing. I don't know we have time for both, but maybe we'll jam those in because it's two questions that you touched on and I think are important.
Social proof. So when you start farming, in the past, people would call you off your postcard or your flyer. And more than ever, people are referencing you online. People are checking you out first before they make that commitment to call you, because the last thing they want is calling a salesperson unless they really need to. So social proof to me is how findable are you? And when you are found, what are people saying about you? Do you have testimonial videos? Are you highly rated on Yelp, on Google, on Zillow? And what are people saying, right? And if someone were to stumble upon your profile, would they say, I want to work with this guy? Or would they say, I don't know, I can't even find this guy? So that's social proof. More than ever, when someone hears about you, even if it's a friend or relative and it's going to be a referral, they're probably going to check you out still. And they want to validate the referral, or they want to validate their first impression of your postcard, right? So that's social proof. The second part is circle dialing. I used to do circle dialing, yet I realized as much as I was building relationships over the phone, it was less impactful than I pushed myself to get to the point where I was comfortable door knocking. So if I wanted to make an impact specifically with homeowners and AKA future sellers, I needed to put myself out there. And circle dialing at that time, I think slowly became more and more limiting because of the do not call and more people selecting to be on that list. So to a certain extent, it used to be different when even banks would have lists to call, and nowadays they can't even pursue, calling others in their
Mhm.
clientele.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely love it. Total gems. And I'd love to know, speaking of which, where we can find you. I'll tell you that I'm on Instagram at Paul Mark Morris. Same with Facebook. Putting more and more value out there. Where can we find you?
Yep. Facebook, you can search my name, or also on Instagram, Wilson, WLREA, and you'll be able to find me.
Love it. Thank you so much. And if there's anything I can do to be of assistance to you, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you really so much for sharing with us.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to learning about how you grew your portfolio. So
Okay, great. We'll exchange notes. Love to do that.
thank you,
Okay. Have
Paul.
a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.